Good afternoon, Nevis, and good afternoon to all of the listeners to Von Radio at this point in time. I'm here again on a Friday afternoon to have another edition of On Point for today, the 22nd day of September 2023. And of course, it is always a pleasure coming here, and I have certainly grown into this now, so I anticipate coming here every Friday. Indeed, today we will cover some grounds, of course, as usual. But before I do that, let me send out my, my warm wishes and warm welcome to all those who are listening here in Nevis, here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and those who are listening further afield, whether it's down in St. Eustatius, Sabre, French and Dutch St. Martin. We have listeners, of course, down in the British and U.S. Virgin Islands. Also, we have persons who are listening up in the United States, of course, from the eastern seaboard all the way across to the west in California, Oregon, Washington State. Indeed, as I've always said, and I very well believe that we have listeners throughout the United States, all of the states, all 50 states, because, of course, Nevisians and, of course, Kittitians have moved to these areas to work, to go to school, vacationing, or whatever the case might be. Indeed, the same thing applies to Canada as well, where we have a large Nevisian community there, especially in Toronto, and we have persons, in Manitoba, in Quebec, all up and down Canada, I'm sure. Saskatchewan, I know some places in Canada, and indeed up in Europe, we have a large Nevisian and Kittitian community there as well, in England, France, all of Europe, like I said, and indeed we go across to Asia and shout up those who are with us at this time of the morning. There in Asia, Taiwan, of course, the Republic of China, Taiwan, where we probably would have most of our nationals. That being said, I sometimes go further afield and not ignore but skip over my hometown over there in St. James, starting from the bottom of Zion Hill all the way up to Fountain and down into Jones Estate. It is a large landmass, yes, that St. James covers. So I'm shouting up all over there who are listening at this point in time, and as I said, throughout the island of Nevis, of course. Well, last week when I was here, I was chastised by a few persons, and they're not necessarily the persons whose name I would call, but I was chastised by a few persons that I didn't indicate that it was their birthday, which was about to come or would have gone. So I missed out on that last week. Let me wish all those folks a happy belated birthday. Indeed, these persons are also still celebrating, so I want to say happy belated birthday to my good friend over there in Bricklin, over the gut, of course, Amarel Bishop. She would have celebrated her birthday on the 19th of September, so it was a double celebration for Amarel. And of course, we have Henrietta, one of my good friends up there in Fountain. Henrietta Daniel, that's the wife of our good friend there as well, Shine. Cleflin, that is Shine's correct name, I believe, an expensive name. But Henrietta was celebrating on a Wednesday, the 20th of September. Also, Ronald Cozier, I went up to wish them happy birthday, of course, and it was good to deliver to them something that they can savor. Also, yesterday, my good friend Tringy Perkins. You see, some people don't like their correct name called. Tringy is one of those guys. Tringy, I've known him as Tringy ever since I know myself. So Tringy, I understand your birthday was yesterday. I believe you had a wonderful time. Knowing you're a partyholic anyway, you would have had a fabulous time, I'm sure. I'll stop by and see you as well, Tringy, so stand by. So those persons I'm wishing belated birthday, and those who are celebrating today and over the weekend, I want to wish you a happy birthday, and hopefully you'll have a marvelous time on your special day. These days, it seems like we are in a season where persons are departing this life on a regular basis. So when a birthday comes around, I'm encouraging all of you and admonishing you to have a wonderful time when it comes. Celebrate like it's the last. Not saying that it will be, but celebrate in that fashion. And I want to wish everyone who are celebrating shortly a wonderful birthday when it comes. Of course, I did say that we're in a season when persons are departing this life, and I want to express condolences to all those who are grieving at this time. Of course, yesterday we had an excellent funeral service up there at the Gingerland Methodist Church, and that was a service where we saw the the service for the former matron, Mrs. Aldris Pemberton Diaz. That was a wonderful service. I'm telling you, if you were there, you would have left not knowing it was a funeral, as it was, but you would have left inspired and enjoyed the celebration that we were able to experience there. That was a celebratory mood, as they say sometimes, and that was a fitting way to send off someone who would have done so much for the island of Nevis, for the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. And it was a difficult afternoon for many of us, many persons who were there. But the singing and the sermon that was delivered by the priest as well, all that was in order and very well received. And I would just want to say, in wrapping up, that may her soul continue to rest in eternal peace. Indeed, we are just coming out of the celebration of our 40th anniversary of independence, and I will say that by and large it was a very, very good celebration, an absolutely phenomenal celebration. There are a couple of things that I certainly will want to impart at this time, to say they stood out to me, or in my mind, in that the ceremony down in St. Kitts on Tuesday evening, Tuesday night, that was indeed a first for me ever, attending a ceremony, an independence ceremony in St. Kitts. And indeed that was a wonderful, wonderful ceremony all around. The soldiers and military personnel would have done an excellent job, along with the other uniform bodies that were there, in terms of the marching and the parade, if you want to call it that. And then, of course, the show that took place, or display that took place thereafter. Everything was in order, and I certainly enjoyed the time there, so that my journey was well worth it. We came back to Nevis in the wee hours of the morning, but outside of that, it was still a wonderful journey to take. Back here in Nevis on Tuesday afternoon, that's the 19th of September, we had a wonderful display up there at the E.T. Willett Park. It was one of the largest crowds I've seen for some time, so perhaps the debate now is whether both times should remain, meaning midnight on St. Kitts on the 18th going into the 19th, and then of course on the 19th and the afternoon of the 19th here on Nevis. Based on what I saw on those 2 days, I would think that consideration can be given to have those events at the same time next year, because you see, most persons argue that on the morning of the 19th it's difficult to get out and get ready and get to the park, and then it's a debate that we can have. I don't think there is anything wrong with maintaining those times, but my opinion is, and based on what I've seen in terms of the numbers, it may very well be one to consider. But the persons came out, and the performances, they were excellent as well. And indeed, although the sun was a bit hot at that time, shortly after arriving at the park, the sun would have gone down in the west, so at least it was a bit more bearable thereafter. And indeed the person stayed until the end, so excellent job all around. And later on in the evening, of course, we went up to the government house, and we were the guest of our Deputy Governor General, Mrs. Ailita Liburd and Mr. Liburd. And the ambience there and the environment there was one that was very nice. Persons seem as though they would have enjoyed themselves, and it was good to see many persons coming out who I probably wouldn't have seen at some of these cocktails in the past. And also it was an absolutely phenomenal thing that we were able to go there and sit on the lawn there at the government house. We will recall, and this is a little bit of politics, and I still have to put it in here, that that project, the renovation of that building, was abandoned in 2006 when the CCM would have left government. And indeed, it was never restarted until the CCM was returned to government. Somewhere around 2015, thereabout, we were able to restart and finish that project shortly after. But the ambience there and the grounds were spectacular. The building, of course, and the interior is just lovely. And some persons who may have gone there may have gone inside as well to see what the interior looks like. But it's good to see cocktails returning to the government house. That's a property that is over, well, it was built in what, 1906 thereabout. So there's some sentimental value to that building, sentimental value to the entire property. It is one of those iconic buildings here on the island of Nevis, and one that we felt had to be restored, had to be occupied, and had to play the role that it should be playing in the overall scheme of our tourism product and just the overall beauty of the island and what Nevis stands for. Because those buildings were designed and built at a time when we didn't have modern technology. Maybe it was modern then, but things are more up to date these days, where people sit on a computer and design buildings. Those were done by hand all around, and that is why we must preserve these type of buildings and architecture. So that is what we had up there on Tuesday evening, and it was a lovely setting. And I want to thank Her Honor Deputy Governor General Mrs. Hailita Liebert and Mr. Liebert for being great host for that evening. So the Independence 40 celebration is all done. No, it's not. Let me not say that. The major activities are now done, but there are some activities still to be held throughout the rest of this month. And of course, those will be advertised, they will be heard about, spoken about. I think there is a big show coming up on St. Kitts that will be advertised, and some other things before the end of the month. Also here in Nevis, I'm sure there are other things that are planned as well. So be that as it may, the activities continue, and those who can partake should partake. Moving along quickly here, last Monday, we had a sitting of the National Parliament there on St. Kitts, and indeed 5 bills were tabled for the first reading. And as it works, normally when you have a first reading, there is no debate, but when it's the second reading going into the third reading, you have the debates on the second reading, and then of course the bill is adopted, passed into law. That kind of thing is done on the third reading. So last week we went to the Federal Parliament last Monday. Unfortunately, I was not able to stay until the end because it was going on for a long time, and the plan was actually to come back to Nevis and then go back to St. Kitts for the event that was held in St. Kitts later on that night, that is the Independence Parade. But at least I was there long enough to listen to the Prime Minister, who would have presented to the nation some incentives that was felt needed at this particular point in time, at this the 40th anniversary, and also to bring some relief to persons within the Federation, and more so to St. Kitts. And indeed those relief that was presented were termed as a reset, meaning a reset on electricity, a reset on water, a reset on land, a reset on housing, a reset on building materials, and incentives that were to be offered, ought to be offered. And also there was a workers' reset. I am just itemizing them this way because there are about 6 different areas in which those relief are planned. In terms of the workers' relief, that was $1,000 that is to be made available through Social Security for those persons who are living in the Federation and who have been paying their Social Security returns. well, over the last, I believe there was a set period of time. But the package is available. I don't have all of the specifics. All I know, $1,000 is coming to those who are up to date with their payments, and also pensioners as well. And I believe there was a footnote that you must be residing in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. That being said, over the next couple of days, if there's any retooling or clarification to be done, that will be done, and persons will know accordingly. In terms of electricity, those who have arrears, they would be reconnected, and then of course it appears that the arrears would still have to be paid, but you will be reconnected. The same thing with water, and in housing, whatever arrears there are at NHC, there will be adjustments made in that regard so as to bring some relief. And also the land side of it, the reset whereby the terms of payment and so forth will be adjusted, along with also the building material incentive package whereby VAT will be reduced, and also custom duties will be removed, and that kind of thing. So that is what is being done there. And we have had some debate and discussions well, throughout the Federation, but more so in Nevis. But I will say this before I go any further: I've heard more discussions coming from the NRP, which is not an opposition party in St. Kitts, but they have been opposing, talking, and giving their views. Nothing is wrong with all that, but the interesting thing is that we have not heard anything as such. I have not heard, maybe the general public may have heard, from the two parties that are in opposition on St. Kitts. I haven't heard them, but at least the NRP, well, I don't even know what to say. But obviously they tend to want to stick their nose into everything. But the interesting thing, though, is that we're not hearing the truth coming from them, because when I look at all of these incentives that are being offered here, this is same as always, way ahead of the game, way ahead of the game. And I'll touch on some of these things, because people would think that the concerned citizens movement in government have not done the things that have been spoken about now. And I will say to you that ever since we came back into government in 2013, we have been doing a reset. We have been doing a recalibration. We have been doing repurposing of our effort. We have been refreshing, reconstructing, all of the reasons you can talk about, reviewing. We have been doing all kinds of things. We've been recovering. And that is when you are working for the people, then all of these things that you're hearing being talked about now are things that we've gone past already. And I'm not knocking the Labour administration. There's nothing wrong with the Labour administration looking over at Nevis and see what is happening in Nevis, and trying to reposition themselves where they can implement the same strategies and the same programs over on St. Kitts. There's nothing wrong with that. By the same token, there's nothing wrong with Nevis seeing something on St. Kitts and seeing that it can work on Nevis and apply it to the conditions here on Nevis. Nothing is wrong with that as well. We are a federation, and if it is that St. Kitts have some strength in various areas and their weakness in certain areas on Nevis, you can always pull from the strength on St. Kitts, apply it to Nevis, and try and improve on Nevis. Same token, nothing is wrong with St. Kitts seeing some strength over here, pull from Nevis and then apply it to St. Kitts. So all of that is a part of the process in terms of building a stronger federation, but also ensuring that each unit within the federation, St. Kitts and Nevis, are doing the right thing to ensure that we bring about some strength on both sides of the aisles. So we have heard a lot from the NRP and those pundits out there who seem to want to oppose and tear down everything that is being done. But I'm here to say to you that all that was spoken about on St. Kitts, we have been doing in Nevis. As a matter of fact, this is called a reset. These incentives and package that has been presented, it is called a reset. And perhaps what is needed at this point in time, if I was the NRP, is a reset of your mindset. Yeah? You need to have a reset of your mindset and understand that not everything in an island or in a country must be free. Our mindset has to be one that we can teach our young people to be responsible. Teach our people, not just our young people, but the whole island and the whole country, that we need to be responsible for our actions. If you were to have electricity, you have water, you consume these utilities every day. There must be a point in time you tell yourself, I'm using it, I have to pay for it. And that time comes at the end of the month. Not everyone is always in a position to pay their full bill at the end of the month, but the thinking should be, if my bill is $100 and I don't have $100, let me go in and pay $25. Let me go and pay $30. Things are difficult, yes, but every institution will be willing to work with you if you make that effort. And that is the kind of thinking that we should inculcate in our people. So that's why I say perhaps a reset of the mindset need to take place. We also need to have that mindset where we're teaching, teaching our young people to get an education, go to school, learn something, learn a skill, learn something technical. Because it is through those training and teaching that you'll be able to make a difference in your life in terms of getting a job which would pay well. And once you work hard in that job, you make your money, then you save some of that money. Then the rest monies you can use to buy your personal stuff. You know, and the money that is saved, of course, out of that, you can use that for emergencies, send your children to school, whatever the case might be. We also have to have that mindset of teaching our young people the value of owning a piece of land. We don't have that major difficulty here in Nevis because it has always been said, and no one need to come for me for this, or come after me for this, but it has always been said that Nevisians have always had this mindset where they want to own a piece of land as soon as they start to work. And many persons out there can be testimony to this. I recall when I was done with high school, or sixth form, I went to teach. First thing I did was to go up to land and housing, Nevis Housing and Land. I was told the only piece of land they can get me is up in Hard Times. Imagine that. I live in Brick Hill and I was told Hard Times was where I need to buy a piece of land. I bought it, yes. Right up there to the back of Hard Times, I bought a piece. But the bottom line is, I wanted a piece of land, and that was way back in 1990 or thereabout, or 1991. I can't recall exactly what year it was. But I went and made sure I secured a piece of land then. The only time I ever bought a piece of land at Land and Housing, or Nevis Housing and Land. So no one come for me after that, because that's the only piece I had. I've since disposed of it. But the point I'm trying to make is that that was my first thinking then, and many of the young people around my age at that time was thinking about owning a piece of land, and that thinking has continued up until today. So we want to ensure that we are teaching our young people, once you have a job, you're working, you save and you invest, and buying a piece of land is an investment that you certainly will have meaningful value in the long run to come. So that is what we should be doing, changing our mindset. And of course, if you own land, you start to think about a house. You start to think about building a house and building a family and building communities. And that is how you want to teach our young people. Not everything you hear, you just want to tear it down and bring the negatives. Out of every negative, try and bring some positive. Try and accentuate the positive, I must say. And that is what we try to do as an administration, the Concerned Citizens Movement. Because you see, this thing about housing, you hear this reset in St. Kitts? We have had a reset in Nevis a long time ago, you know. Since 2013, when we came into government, we had a reset. I wonder if the people of Nevis recall that we've been talking about those houses over at Cherry Gardens, where the NRP had no plans other than to say, well, they're building Cherry Garden just to increase the amount of voters in St. John's. Build these houses. No plan as to how you will get those houses into people's hands who will be responsible enough to pay back the mortgage. No, they went and gave keys away. That was the NRP's way. We didn't see that as the best way or the most productive way to get persons into houses so that they can be a payback whereby that money could then be used again to build more. That was one of those quick fix where you took a key and gave it to someone and said, go into the house, pay $1,000 to the corporation. But that wasn't happening. Persons got the key. If someone give me a key without any documentation, meaning you don't have a legal document to hold to say, well, I have a mortgage, I have a title that has my name on it, whereby at some point I can say, well, I am done paying, this is my title, free and clear of all encumbrances. Yeah, that is what you'll want to encourage if you were to have a reset and a change of the mindset. So we came into government and we said, no, we can offer something better. So we offer this mortgage relief, whereby if you had a balance of, for example, $100,000, we gave you a 15% discount on the balance. We did all of the necessarily legal work down there, the legal department of the NIA. So there was no cost to the homeowner or the potential homeowner. All of the fees and charges were paid by the government, so to speak. And then what we did, we packaged that mortgage and gave you a letter, so you went off to the bank. And the bank would have approved those loans for many persons. 30-something, 40-something persons. I don't know the number to date. But I know quite a number of persons would have taken us up on that. And I'm bringing this up because when you hear about mortgage or housing reset, we have been doing it in Nevis long time ago. So persons got those mortgages. And not only that, when they got that title, it was placed in their name. Just that they couldn't go home with the title and put it in their safe or in their cupboard or wherever it is. It was lodged with the bank, but their name is on that title. And many of the persons who were able to benefit from that mortgage relief then went ahead and bought a vehicle. They did some refinancing right there and then. The bank was able to inform them or educate them or show them the way in terms of including a vehicle in that package as well. And you know the interesting thing? Some persons end up paying less than what they were supposed to pay at the corporation. So they got their title, they got the property in their names, and they also ended up with a vehicle. So that's how you encourage people to advance, or you incentivize them to advance in life. Yeah? And that's why we have always said it is important to have that title in your hand. So you can wave it around Charlestown. You don't have to have the original. You could take a picture of the original and then you go on home with that. Anybody come to you say, boy, look, this is in my name, you know. But they couldn't do that under the NRP because that was not the thinking of the NRP. The NRP is all about the big wigs, big financiers, the big supporters, and those who in a circle. You know that circle? They don't care about poor people. If they had cared about poor people, they would have come up with something similar to what I just spoke about, or they could have come up with another incentive package whereby they can get persons into homes and owning homes, similar to what I'll talk about now. I recall in 2016 thereabout, when things were difficult, persons were not getting loans or mortgages from the banks because the banks had some hefty interest rate, 11%, 9%. And then you have to come up with health insurance, what do you call it, life insurance. You have to come up with this major down payment. Man, you had to come up with so much that it was nigh impossible for young people, poor people, to get into houses here on the island of Nevis. So we came up with a package at the NHLDC, and from the cabinet level we had some discussions. Yes, we actually borrowed some monies from Social Security. Initially it was $10 million, then we went on and borrowed another $15 million and built quite a number of homes out there in Cedar View, phase 1 and 2, that's over at Madden's, down in Cohoon, second phase down there in Cohoon, over in Cherry Gardens, second phase over in Cherry Gardens, up in University Heights. We did a housing development up there for students who would have graduated from universities and have been back for 5 years or more, and quite a number of private homes around Nevis that were built on lands that were either bought from the corporation or lands that persons would have owned through whatever means. So we introduced that program because we felt that we need to find a way to get our young men and young women into housing. You see, when you get young people into housing, that's a way to bring about some responsibility on their part. Responsible for their mortgages, responsible for their utilities, responsible for their families. And that's where the whole idea of responsibility comes in. So we introduced this program. We said, if the house was valued at a particular amount, you pay down $5,000. There was another tier where you pay down $7,500. And if it was, on the higher end of it, you pay down $10,000. And we indicated that no one will pay anything more than $1,200 per month through this program. And the interest rate, most importantly, was 5%. 5%. And we did all of the legal work ourselves at the the legal department. So we tried our best to streamline the program whereby our young men and young women can participate and own their homes. So you go over to Cedar View, lovely looking houses over there. I'm sure there's almost 60 houses over there by now. And then the third phase is continuing, which is a bit different. You go down to Kuhun, second phase, lovely houses. You go down to Cherry Garden, second phase, lovely houses. You go up to Hamilton. I don't think Hamilton would have fallen under the second phase of at Hamilton would have fallen under that same program, because we didn't have the lands there. We didn't have lands down in Craddock Road. But everywhere else on Nevis, where we did some construction between 2016, 2020, thereabout, all that was done through that particular program. Happy persons are around Nevis, all around Nevis as a result, because of that 5%. And I could go further and say, I do believe that what we did would have put pressure on the commercial banks down there in Charlestown. They now are following in our footsteps that we would have done right there at the NHLDC, whereby they're now down to 5% too, And I believe they're going to come down lower again too, because the pressures were brought to bear. That lot of mercy, 9% for affordable income houses, that is too high. So the competition had gotten so tight that we were able to bring about that change where the percentage rate was brought down to as low as 5%. And so I'm happy about that. So when people talk about reset, that is why I had to put that in there, because we have been doing these things for the people of Nevis for a very long time. And indeed, we have done other things to create a difference here on the island of Nevis. I looked at some numbers this morning, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we have put in place, the Nevis Island Administration, under your CCM government, an incentive package whereby if you're renovating your home and it costs $30,000 or more for renovation, then you get duty-free concession on the materials. There's a reason why we did that, because coming out of COVID, things were rough. Things were rough, but also I'm going to go one step further and say that there were other beneficiaries of this program that we would have put in place, because it was a wholesome policy whereby we understood that there were a lot of depressed properties here on the island of Nevis. You know, those properties in Jones Estate, in Cliff Dwellers, in Golden Rock, Zetlands, wherever. These properties have been owned by what we call expats. And one may say that, oh, they don't live here, they're not Nevisians or whatever. Well, that is one argument you can make, but I'll tell you, many of these persons have been owning those properties for 30, 40 years. So you could very well say they're Nevisians, because they come here, spend 6 months of the year, and then they go back up during the summer. They spend their winter here, then they go back up during the summer months in their various countries. But you know, they have these properties, expensive properties, but a lot of them would have gotten into a state of disrepair. A lot of them, the owners would have gotten to an older age as well, and they have decided that they no longer want to come. We understand that. But for 40 years, they were coming constantly every year, sometimes once a year, sometimes twice per year. So if they decide they're no longer coming back, or one of the spouse, or maybe the husband or the wife would have passed, then you understand the property would stay there unoccupied. We came up with this brilliant idea. Why not incentivize the owners to sell by removing that 10% alien land holding license fee. That is 10% the government should have collected. But we decided let's waive that. So we waived it, and you know, the sales went through the roof. Sales went through the roof. We still collected what we call the stamp duties though. But when I check some numbers this morning, I see some astonishing numbers. Between September of 2020 and December 2022, we saw a global figure of $161,979,859.54 in terms of value of those properties that would have changed hand. These are properties that were sold during that period of time. The global value of that package is $161,979,859.54. So the government in stamp duties would have collected just over $16,000 thereabout. About 16,000. Not 16,000, let's get it right. 16 million, not thousand. You can almost get 16,000 off of one sale. So $16,124,060.45. That is what we would have collected. Now, let's look at the flip side of that. The government decided we're not doing anything about that. Properties sit down here in Davis, whether up in Zetlands, like I said, over in Jones Estate, Cliff Dwellers, Montpelier, wherever they are. Just sit down there. The house fall into a state of disrepair. Keep in mind there are landscapers who work on these properties. There are domestic workers who go there to clean. Some of them have pools. There is a company here on the island that services pools. Utilities. All of them have electricity, water, perhaps internet, cable, and those things. Property taxes have to be paid. Now you look at all of that and you say, now suppose the government decided we're not touching that issue, just leave it. One, they'll say they have no need for a landscaper anymore, just let the place run into bush. Two, leave it there, close down. Because I don't have the money, I'm not interested in spending that money to clean up anything. The pool, just empty it or leave it there, let it run into a state of disrepair. Cut the electricity, cut the water, cut the cable, cut the internet. Just imagine a homeowner sitting down in Vermont or New Hampshire or over in Washington State. They are in their other house. You think they'll be too worried about the one here? Especially if they don't have the ways and means, especially if they're up in age and they've told us that they're not coming back. They'll leave it there and say, if it gets sold, it gets sold. But the hindrance to the sale sometimes is that alien land holding license fee. It hasn't stopped any sales as such, but sometimes can be a burden. So we removed it. And that is the end result of that. The end result is that we've been able to move well over 100 properties. About 103 properties were sold to the tune of $161,979,859.54. That is phenomenal. And I'll say further that every application for an alien land holding license that comes into the Ministry of Agriculture, there is a charge of $1,000 to process that particular license or the documents, meaning the minister then goes to cabinet with that folder and present it to the cabinet, and the cabinet will say yea or nay, and then, but even before that, $1,000 have to be paid. We introduced that some years ago. That's easy. I was telling the cabinet it should be $1,000 US, but anyway, they all disagreed with me and said 1,000 EC is fine. And everyone, so let's say a property now, these days what I've been seeing is that a property would have a husband and a wife, or let's call it father and mother, along with 4 children. So that's $6,000 right there. The mother has to apply for one, father, and the children needs one, individually they need one. So that's $6,000 extra that is made on that property. And that was introduced, I believe, in 2014, there about 20, somewhere back there. Because, of course, we're processing these documents. So, if you're processing, then somebody need to be paid. I believe other countries, other territories have since gone ahead and are doing just what we're doing. So we normally would lead and people would follow, yeah? So that is something that I certainly think is a good thing, because it's extra revenue for the treasury of Nevis, of course. And that indeed. So I just wanted to say that that's another package. Who knows? It might be introduced in St. Kitts someday, but we won't have a difficulty with it, because if something is working in Nevis, then of course there's nothing wrong with it being used in St. Kitts. So in terms of subsidies, in terms of reset, in terms of assistance to our people, I will say to you, you see electricity? I touch it, these things one by one, those reset packages that were offered, You see electricity? Before the CCM left government in 2006, fuel surcharge was introduced. But you know what? It was introduced just to the commercial users, meaning businesses. Domestic users were not burdened with that at all. Why? It was felt then that if you introduce it to the commercial businesses or the commercial entities here on the island, then they would pass that cost on to the shoppers or patrons or whomever come to their business establishments. So the domestic users are the ones. So if the domestic users go out and purchase at, let's say, Best Buy or whomever, then of course the price will be reflected there. So we said no. The domestic users, no, we did not put it on the domestic users. You know who introduced fuel surcharge on the domestic users? The same NRPO that is playing holy and pious. That is some harm to our people, but they would make it seem like you don't remember what happened then. So we can talk as if we're in the moment of now. Huh? And that is how they're talking. But NRP introduced the fuel surcharge on the domestic users in Nevis. Who removed that off of the backs of the people of Nevis? The domestic users. CCM did it. CCM was the party in government who removed it. And so right now you're just paying, those domestic users are not paying, but the commercial users are paying. Those are initiatives that your CCM, and I think I told the Premier, we need to talk long and hard, because they're out there talking long and hard. And if they talk long and hard, they believe they're believable. But we have the truth walking around with. We need to put it out. We need to talk about these things. Because we introduced this retirement package for non-established workers. Who introduced that? Not the NRP. It's the CCM who would have done it. And they could say that some persons haven't got their packages yet. Listen, if something is in the process of being taken care of, it will get to the recipient in short order. Different ministries and different departments work at a certain pace. All I would do is encourage them to move with alacrity to get these packages finalized for the people who they're intended for. And so this was introduced by the Concerned Citizens Movement, where we felt our non-established workers have been they've been shortchanged over the years. And they needed to be looked after. And so when they retire, they have more comfort of mind, peace of mind, and they're able to live a decent life thereafter, after they would have retired. So we introduced that, the CCM. So what is so difficult in us embracing these things? Even the NRP supporters get it too. All divisions who qualify get it. But the way you hear them talking as if, no, it's not being handed down to those who should get it. They're giving you this spin out there as if things are that bad when it comes to this particular package. It's an excellent package. Is it perfect? No, certainly not. It is not perfect. But I'll tell you this much. Void of this particular package, persons who would have retired recently or are on the verge of retiring, they get this lump sum, they go home, and then that's it. They depend on what Social Security have to offer, and that's it. But you have two sources from which you can now get some monies to continue paying your bills. If you still have other commitments, you would be able to live in peace and have an idea as to where those monies are coming from. In terms of Water and electricity, I touched on that already because, you know, we introduced these subsidy programs to our elderly. A program that no other island in the Caribbean or in the sub-region is using it. Well, if they have started since the CCM, and they would have copied off of our program, because that was introduced in 2013. When it was introduced, many persons who are in social development throughout the region, all they were saying is, wow, that is innovation. And we were innovative when we said that our elderly, who would have done so much for the island of Nevis, who would have been places, done things, and have really championed the cause of the island of Nevis in terms of ensuring that the foundation was built for us. What we're working on now is a foundation built by many of the persons who would have gotten to 65 and older. Many would have worked in the civil service for 40 plus years. Many would have taught for 30 plus years. And I just want to say I love this one, you know, because I went to this funeral last Saturday morning, and the lady who gave the eulogy said that Teacher Lance taught for 40 plus years and then retired, and she taught for 3 years and she was tired after 3 years. So Teacher Lance taught for 40 years and then retired. After 3 years she was tired. But it's persons like those. I know Teacher Lance is no longer with us, but persons like Teacher Lance and those out there who would have put in the effort, who have worked for many years in the island of Nevis, living on their own on a fixed income. We said we have a subsidy program for them in water and electricity. I believe it is $150 for electricity. If you were to consume that much, anything over that you'll pay. Water, $30. But in many cases, many of our people do not or hardly exceed those amounts. So you can say it's free to them, but it's a subsidy program. We introduced that. And now we come to this building material incentive incentive package that is being offered on St. Kitts. I will say so long as I have been in the Nevis Island administration, that program has been offered. And there's nothing wrong, like I said, for anyone to look at our programs and streamline them to suit their cause. Over here in Nevis, we said a house valued at $400,000 and up, you get the concession, you waive the duty, and of course other incentives that are being offered. In St. Kitts, they said 500,000. That's a difference of $500. I mean, what it is five. No, that's a difference of 100,000. Sorry, my apologies. So 400,000 and Nevis, 500,000 and St. Kitts. Difference of 100,000. My apologies. So when it's all said and done, we can go into semantics and say, well, St. Kitts say 500, go up to 500. Then St. Kitts go up to 600, and then we come back and say go up to 700. We have this policy in place for a number of years, and many persons have benefited and are still benefiting. And we have seen an increase in construction as a result of this particular building material incentive program here on Nevis. I think they call it BMIP. How do you acronym for that is what? Well, anyway, BMIP, Building Material Incentive Program. That has been there for some time. And of course, I did talk about the introduction of that 30,000 for renovation, 30,000 or more. You get your concession there as well. So we have been doing these things, and there are other programs that I'm sure that we'll introduce as time go by. So the reset and the recalibration continues. CCM is that kind of government, you know, where we keep resetting, recalibrating. You know, I was in St. Kitts in the federal cabinet for a couple of years. I think just about 2.5 years, or just over 2 years. And while we were there, especially during COVID, a lot of discussions were taking place regarding what can be done to alleviate some of the difficulties and hardship that were brought upon our people as a result of COVID-19. That being said, one of the things that was introduced while we were there, and it was something that I believe some discussions were probably held between the financial or the Ministry of Finance here on Nevis and on St. Kitts. We have been offering to our bus operators here on Nevis. Those are those bus operators that have the H&M. We've been offering them an incentive package for many years too, you know. That is through the NBA, and those of you who don't know what NBA means, it means the Nevis Bus Association. They would have come and lobbied, and they get these incentive packages on their brakes, meaning their disc pad, their brakes pad or brake shoes, and their tires and other mechanical stuff that they import or buy locally. So we have been offering that here in Nevis, and you know, it was during COVID when it was brought to light in St. Kitts, and I sat there in cabinet and I said, boy, we're ahead of the game. We're ahead of the game. Because while we were already receiving those benefits in Nevis, they were just introducing it in St. Kitts. Marky, we don't have the big purse, you know. We don't have the big purse of CBI funds and that kind of thing, but there's a saying, little is much, eh? And my grandparents used to turn a $1 into $5 sometimes, meaning they used to spend in such a way that they got more for the little that they had. And so here in Nevis, we have been doing the same thing. We've been getting more with little. And we've been trying to take care of our citizens in all areas. We've been trying to take care of our citizens. And so I want to say kudos to the Honorable Mark Brantley and his administration. Well, he corrected me the other day and said, oh, administration. It's our administration, that's right. Because a lot of the things that we're talking about, I was there at the table, gave it my approval, gave my suggestions, and tweaking was done, and then a final document was realized. But it was our thing. We all were there. We all had the same mindset of trying to make life better and easier for the people of Nevis. Even though there are challenges out there, we continue to work for and on behalf of the people of Nevis. And so these things are not necessarily new to us. But I commend the Prime Minister and his team for having the wisdom and foresight and understanding that you have to take care of people. And so when I hear some of this rhetoric here from the island of Nevis, I believe the plan is to try to put a wedge between the federal government and the Nevis Island administration, you know. I think they want to create and stir up trouble. But I think we're wise enough and smart enough to understand that we are in this together in terms of a federation. For 40 years we've had bickering back and forth. Bickering in St. Kitts, bickering in Nevis, bickering in Nevis, bickering in St. Kitts. Fighting between both governments. And there comes a time when you have to tell yourself, these things have been played out and you're tired of going down the same road. Can we just not get along at some point in our history or in our march towards a better place? There must be a point in time when we can say, let us see if we can work. Let us see if we can work together. Let us see what we can do to ensure that the people who we represent get a better life and have something of substance when we're all done with our sojourn in terms of representing people. There must be something. Because you can't take an argument to the bank. You can't take an argument to the supermarket. Whatever is done has to be substantial enough that persons can hold on to it and move on in terms of using that to better their lives. So ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to touch on those things, because of course we continue to do what is necessary to ensure that this federation continue to advance, and indeed we have seen tremendous progress over the years. Have it been easy? No. Have there been difficulties? Yes. Will there be challenges in the future? Of course. But the way that we position ourselves, if not indeed reposition ourselves at this point in our history, it can certainly determine where we go to from here on in. But if we have a leader on St. Kitts, the Prime Minister, Dr. Jew, who is willing to work with the island of Nevis, work with the administration here on Nevis, then I believe that is a start, and that is a step in the right direction. Now, if we have a leader here on the island of Nevis in the person of Mark Brantley, who is willing to work with the Prime Minister and work with the administration in St. Kitts, then it therefore means that we may very well see something more meaningful and more beneficial to the people of Nevis, which is what we all are working for. We don't make promises that we don't keep. We make commitments to you, and we are committed to the people of Nevis. We are committed to the people of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. And we are committed to the betterment of the entire Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Good things are happening out there, people. No matter what is said and done from the other side, we understand that people will oppose. But when it's all said and done, we are a smart and intelligent community. We will know who is making mischief, and we know who have our best interests at heart. Because as I said before, there are those who would make noise about electricity and water. And there was a point in time here on the island of Nevis when things were difficult for the poorest among us, where they had to walk down from up there in Stony Grove, catch a bus from down there in Hanley's Road before the road was even fixed. They had to walk and then catch a bus out of those bad roads down there in Hanley's Road. Those up in Fountain had to walk all the way even down there to the bottom of Westbury Road in the hot sun to make sure they get down to Nevlec to pay their bills of $200 or $300, whatever the case might be. Small bills. There were some in the NRP who had bills amounting to 40,000, 80,000. You had a radio station, an FM radio station around here that owed Nevlec $156,000 and counting. And that station was still collecting $144,000 at the end of each year, and still owe $156,000. So when it comes to electricity, NRP don't talk about electricity, because the evidence will show that if you were there still up until this day, the $156,000 might have been 10 times that by now, because there was no effort being made to either cut, collect, or anything of that sort. But you all would have all to say in this point in time. But one thing I know you can't say is that the CCM haven't taken care of its people. We have been doing that since we came into government, and we're going to do that until the people of Nevis decide that they've had enough with CCM, which won't be soon. It wouldn't be anytime soon. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we'll have some more time to talk politics. There's so many things you can say within an hour, and yet still the hour is still not enough. But I'm running out of time. Oh, oops. I'm out of time, but my engineer didn't give me the signal. But anyway, let me go into a wrap-up phase and say it is always my pleasure coming here on a Friday afternoon. I was here last Friday. I had a wonderful time. I came back this Friday and equally had an excellent time here with you as well. I generally say it's my pleasure to spend my lunch hour with you. And I do that every Friday, God's willing. I'll be back next week. So until then, those of you who are having lunch, enjoy your lunch and make sure it's an embellishing one. Those of you who would be doing anything this weekend, be safe about it. Take care of yourself, because we don't want to lose anyone. We want to have you here to contribute to the future development of the island of Nevis. That has been my quota for today. It is certainly my pleasure coming here. Tune in again next Friday from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. for another edition of On Point, right here on Von Radio 860 AM or 93.7 on the FM band. Thank you very much. God bless you. Have a wonderful afternoon and an excellent weekend. Thank you. Goodbye.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program was solely